Welcome to Litigation Nation. I'm your host, Jack Sanker, along with my co-host, Danessa Watkins. This is the show where we talk about the most important and interesting legal developments of the past couple of weeks. Danessa, what do you have today?
Today, I'm going to cover the defamation lawsuit that has resulted from Netflix series Baby Reindeer.
Oh boy.
There was a recent motion to dismiss filed in the Central District of California, so I will fill you all in on what claims survived and which ones got kicked out.
And we're going to be talking on my side of things about the 14 or so different lawsuits that were filed by a number of different attorneys general against TikTok, the social media punching bag that you hear about so much in the news these days. As a reminder, you can find the show everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever. We publish usually around twice a month, and let's get into it. Here's what you need to know.
All right, so Baby Reindeer. This was a Netflix 7-part miniseries that was released on April 11th of 2024. Jack, I think you said you haven't seen it, correct?
No, I have not.
And I was trying to think of how to best summarize what this series is, because it really is a roller coaster of emotions, and there definitely should be trigger warnings for anyone watching it, because it does get into issues of harassment, rape, drug use. But just to, I guess, summarize it as briefly as possible, it's a show about a struggling Scottish comedian, and he ends up taking a bartending job where he meets this woman who turns out to be his stalker for a number of years. It kind of follows their relationship back and forth, the craziness that ensues with that, but it also takes this turn, I guess you don't see coming, where this comedian gets in with this TV writer who ends up they get into this friendship where all they do is take drugs, and he promises he's going to make him a star, but in reality, turns out he is raping him while he is
I was going to say there has to be a catch,
yeah.
Obviously.
Yes. So I won't give away the ending, but it rounds back around, I guess, to the original two people, which is the comedian and then his stalker. I can't even explain it. You have to watch it, essentially, to understand how crazy this show is. But the part that gets you and really tugs you in is right in the beginning, it flashes this tagline that says, "This is a true story." So once you see all these characters and follow, what happens, you're like, there is no possible way this is true. I mean, that's what I thought.
Right.
But I
thought the thing I had seen ads for it, and I thought it was fictional, and I sat through like a 30-second teaser and was like, this looks ridiculous and a little spooky. Mm-hmm. So that's probably why I didn't watch.
And we definitely, after watching it, we started doing our own research, because we wanted to get did this really happen? How come there haven't been lawsuits based on these characters and what's gone on? And you learn pretty quickly that the show was created and actually stars the comedian Richard Gadd, and the series was adapted from his autobiographical one-man stage play. So again, leading more credence to, yes, this is a true story. It's received 6 of the 11 Emmy nominations that it was put up for just recently. And I think within days of the show coming online on Netflix, there was, and I did see this on social media, Richard Gadd put out a statement and said, hey, everyone, please stop searching online, trying to figure out who the real life people are that we portray in this show, because they obviously changed their names.
Which that didn't work, I'm assuming.
It did not work.
Yeah.
Within 2 weeks, there was a woman that came out and pretty much admitted that she was the real, what is her name? Martha Scott is the name of the character. She's the antagonist, the one who does all the...
She's the stalker.
Stalker, thank you. I'm like, what is that word? I'm like, harasser? No. Yes. So Martha Scott is the antagonist stalker in the series. So the real person, who is Fiona Harvey. She is a 58-year-old Scottish woman. She came out, pretty much admitted that it was her, and then shortly after went on Piers Morgan and addressed the fact that a lot of what is shown in the Netflix series is not actually accurate. So she, even though people had somewhat figured out that it could be her, I mean, it's all speculation, right? But she made it known, yep, this was written after me, and here's all the reasons why it's not true.
Didn't have to do that.
Did not have to do that.
Okay.
Agreed. But, I mean, look, I've never been on the other end of, the internet sleuths coming at you. According to her, she was receiving hate mail and harassment for the way that she was portrayed. And, people believe that she actually did the things that are portrayed in the show because, again, Netflix put that. This is a true story.
Right.
So she has brought a lawsuit. This was just filed in June in the Central District of California against Netflix Inc. and Netflix Worldwide Entertainment LLC. She is alleging defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligence, gross negligence, violations of her right of publicity, and also brought a claim for punitive damages. So, just recently, Netflix filed a motion to dismiss the claims in general, but also a special motion to strike based on the anti-SLAPP statute,
Sure.
Which we've covered in other shows. It's the strategic lawsuit against public participation. So it's essentially a claim that someone is bringing a baseless lawsuit for the malicious purpose of silencing otherwise protected
down
speech.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, standard, what you would bring in this type of a claim. So in support of their SLAPP motion, Netflix went into great detail about Harvey's history of stalking behavior, trying to show that this is true. Everything we said about this person, even though we, didn't use her name.
This is such good advertising for the show now.
It's actually, pretty wild. So I didn't read their full motion, but I did find the Central District's opinion on the motion, which does go into some of the details. What was interesting are the similarities between the two characters. Well, the character, Martha, and then the real person, Harvey. So in reality, Harvey is a Scottish lawyer living in London. She has been accused of stalking in the past, and these were published in newspaper articles. And if you have seen the show, to me, one of the craziest parts was how Martha's character, she just has this unique way of speaking, a unique cadence to her voice, and apparently, according to the court records, it is indistinguishable from the real-life Harvey, which is crazy. So anyone that knows Harvey and saw Martha's character being depicted would immediately know that it was the same person. So, as part of the opinion, they go into Harvey's history of stalking. So, per the opinion, back in 1997, she was hired by a law firm and was terminated shortly after being employed. And then within weeks, she started harassing her employer and the employer's family.
Oh my God, she's making it so much worse.
I know. All this history is coming forward. So for 5 years, she was threatening her former employee, following her and her family, making false reports about them. And this continued until they effectively got a restraining order. I'm kind of surprised it took that long for them to do that. But either way, all of this led to multiple news stories because the employer was married to a member of British Parliament. So it attracted a lot of attention, and stories covered this issue from the years 2000 to 2004 because also during that time, the Miss Harvey also was stalking the First Minister of Scotland.
Okay.
So she has high-profile targets.
These are allegations or convictions?
Both resulted in restraining orders. So there were not convictions,
right.
but there is, paperwork and police reports covering it.
We're not representing that she actually did these things.
These are, they're allegations that resulted in restraining orders. Yes, we don't know the truth of them.
And insofar as we ever get in trouble for anything like that, I will be asserting podcaster's privilege.
I'm just going to say I'm relying on the Central District's opinion. So, but yes. Then fast forward to 2014. That is when Harvey met Gadd, who is the producer and the star of Baby Reindeer, and she almost immediately began stalking and harassing him. It followed the similar pattern to how she behaved with the former two. She found out what Gadd's schedule was. She would follow him, attend events that he was performing at. As similarly to what's depicted in Baby Reindeer, she did get handsy with him at times without his consent. And on one occasion, allegedly got violent with him, quote, shoving him in the back of his neck, end quote.
Okay.
For years, she sent him countless emails, social media messages, voicemails, handwritten letters, and that harassment continued until 2017 when he got essentially the equivalent of a protective order. Now, she was never prosecuted or convicted for any crimes related to her behavior, but they did find and by they I mean Netflix, did find a criminal lawyer who practices in England and Wales to give a declaration supporting their motion to dismiss, and she essentially said that her behavior rose to the level of criminal stalking, which would be punishable by 5 years imprisonment. So, the series gets released. The opinion notes that shortly after that, we did have Harvey appearing on Piers Morgan, reaffirming that the Martha character was based on her.
Right. Again, doesn't have to do that.
Exactly.
Doesn't have to go on TV and say that was me.
Yes. I mean, certainly at that point it was speculation, but the strongest pull was that within the series, there's this part where the Martha character says, I want you to come hang my curtains. And so these internet sleuths, and I don't pretend to know how they do what they do, but they went way back to 2014 and they did find some post by Harvey where she essentially said, hang my curtains on, I think it was Twitter feed or something. Yeah. So that's how they drew the ultimate connection. Now, after Harvey filed her complaint, the Sunday Times ran an article about the lawsuit, and it essentially suggested that Netflix went out of its way to add that tag, "This is a true story," at the beginning of the series. Apparently, Gadd, the writer, he expressed concerns about representing it that way. He said that in his own show, he says based on a true story. And Netflix insisted, no, we need to say this is a true story.
That's fascinating.
Which, yeah, very bad fact for Netflix.
Though, I wonder, maybe we're not giving them enough credit because this whole thing of like, you know what, let's get ourselves sued so that we can continue to tell this story, like, and get a ton of free media coverage. Because like now I want to watch the show. I wonder if they're playing, five-dimensional chess over there, and they're like, yeah, let's go ahead and invite a lawsuit from, like Scotland's most famous stalker, and see how that can't hurt us, right? I don't know. Yeah. Anyways.
No, it's an interesting thought because that's
because their legal should have flagged.
That's so basic.
Don't ever do that.
Right.
Don't ever say this is the truth. Like you say, this is largely based on that.
Yeah. I think they probably did it, for, I don't know, for dramatic purposes, but the idea is that what is in the mind of the reasonable viewer, and I think now we're used to dramatized, especially when it comes to murder cases or illegal cases in general.
Yeah.
That's all over Netflix right now. So
that's what I mean, though. It's like, and what are her damages? Like, it's still going to be like from Netflix perspective, nothing. And the trade-off here is like a tremendous amount of very interesting press, including, I guess, this recording that we're doing right this second.
I guess so, that's true.
Okay.
Well, so if you haven't seen Baby Reindeer,
now I want to know.
Now you're going to want to see it. All right, so getting into some of the issues that were raised in the motion to dismiss. So anti-SLAPP, essentially, you have to show that that there is first protected speech that is being impacted. That was an easy hurdle, essentially, for Netflix to overcome, and the court agreed. Yes, of course, you're putting out this series. It's going to be protected speech. The harder hurdle is the second prong, which is showing that the plaintiff has a probability of prevailing on the merits of her claims. And that burden is actually on the plaintiff to come forward and show, I'm not just bringing this meritless lawsuit to affect free speech. So in order to do that, she had to show that she would, defamation is the nature of the claim. Everything else that she brings is pretty much based on a finding of defamation. So that was the main focus of this opinion. Now, one key aspect of defamation, I'm sure in every jurisdiction, is that the statement has to reasonably be interpreted as referring to the plaintiff. So here we have a series that uses this other name, takes some liberties with how they present the character. So the argument by Netflix is a reasonable reader or viewer would not know that Martha is actually Harvey.
Right, and it would be unreasonable. And actually, the internet sleuths who went and did all this insane investigation, those people are unreasonable.
So that's exactly what Netflix argued. It says, even if there are strong similarities, this is quoting from the opinion, a reasonable person would not have identified plaintiff because it required research and cyber sleuthing. These cyber sleuths are not representative of reasonable persons. So that was, end quote, the defendant's argument. The court, though, seemed to agree with the plaintiff. It says, however, plaintiff alleges that it required little effort for these cyber sleuths to find her, as they simply found her public posts on Gadd's social media referencing the same, quote, hang my curtains, end quote, joke that is featured in the series. So,
okay.
Again, though, I think you really had to do some digging to find that. So I think the court is maybe, I don't know, giving a little too much, not even giving credit, I guess taking credit away from the cyber sleuths. I mean, I don't think that's something that I would have found, but this isn't my line of business either. So, so ultimately the court looked at everything, looked at the similarities between the character and the real life person, and found this is not the typical case where a plaintiff just happens to be one of 100 people that could match a fictional character. It says, quote, rather, Martha and plaintiff have specific similarities that few others could claim to share. Specifically, Martha and plaintiff are both Scottish lawyers living in London. 20 years.
She's a lawyer?
Yeah.
Wait, did I miss? I know you said she worked at a law firm. I guess I'm sorry. I assumed that she wasn't an attorney, but.
Oh, no, she's a lawyer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cool. This story's great.
Yeah. So the court found while there may be numerous Scottish lawyers living in London of the same age, or same approximate age as the plaintiff, it is very likely that only plaintiff has been accused of stalking a lawyer in a newspaper article while also communicating with Gadd on social media, end quote. So, yeah, there's probably only, and not to mention the other stalking that of the, what was it, like a prime minister or? Yeah.
She's like, listen, I'm the only Scottish stalker lawyer. So it has to be about me.
Yes, exactly. So the court agreed with her that, yes, she was. It was clearly about her. Okay. And a reasonable person would realize that. The next defense was. That's so funny. She's like,
listen, everyone knows that I love to stalk, and there's no possible way. I mean, there's one thing you know about me. I will be stalking.
Stalkers be stalking.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. This is awful. Going off script here. All right, let's see. So another thing that came up was this issue of fact. So a defamatory statement needs to be factual. Opinions are absolutely protected. Of course, in my world, drawing that line between fact and opinion, it can be gray sometimes. Usually you're mixing words that are factual and opinion based. But again, the judge went back to Netflix. You all said right at the beginning, quote, "This is a true story," end quote. So you are presenting this as factual.
Yeah. So this is on a motion to dismiss, like a 12b6.
It's in California. They have a special process for SLAPP defenses.
Okay.
So they did bring a motion to dismiss, but the opinion here is primarily focused on the SLAPP defense.
So the ruling would boil down to, okay, we're at the actual factual question: is this true or not?
Sorry.
So maybe I'm getting lost in the weeds here, but the court is.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So what the plaintiff has to show, what Harvey has to show, is that her case has merit, that she could actually prevail on these claims, and how she does that is essentially, yes, defending what would be a 12b6. So defending against what Netflix says, here are all the defenses we would bring.
Right.
And she's saying, well, no, those defenses aren't valid. So yes, the issue of fact is one of them. And yeah, the court found no, a reasonable viewer would think that these are factual statements, what's included in this miniseries. And again, this just goes back to, well, if they had just at the beginning said based on true events, maybe this wouldn't be a lawsuit, but.
Unless the lawsuit is what it is, but on the merits of the lawsuit, the defense here is that Netflix is going to assert is that it is true. Mm-hmm. This is what happened.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's not defamatory.
Right. Well, so actually, that leads right back into the opinion. The next issue is substantial truth. So substantial truth is an absolute defense to defamation. Essentially, no matter how offensive something may be, if it's substantially true, so it doesn't have to be true in every single factor, but if the general gist is accurate, there's not going to be a defamation claim. Mm-hmm. So here, what Netflix tried to do is show, here are all of the comparisons between our character and the plaintiff, Ms. Harvey. Maybe we took a few liberties here and there, but generally speaking, what we described is accurate. The plaintiff, Ms. Harvey, obviously came back and said, no, you took way more than just liberties. So, for example, she was never actually convicted of a crime. So even though there were allegations of her stalking, the show portrayed that she had been convicted previously, which is false.
And isn't that also falsely attributing someone to being convicted of something?
That is defamation per se.
Yeah. Okay, mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yeah. In the show, they said that she had stalked a police officer. In reality, she stalked an attorney, her husband, a member of British Parliament, and the First Minister of Scotland. So
wow.
I don't know what's worse, but either way, they didn't portray her truthfully. The issue of the sexual assault. So it's pretty graphic in the series. They show her sexually assaulting Gadd in an alley, grabbing his genitals. There's also some physical activity in a bar scene where she crashes a bottle over his head, gouges his eyes out with her thumbs. In reality, there was not that much violence between them. Yes, she did. She says she touched his bum without consent.
All right.
Didn't grab his genitals. She shoved him in the back of the neck. She didn't gouge his eyes out or smash a bottle over his head. So she says she didn't take all those actions that they portray her as taking.
And has the comedian Gadd, is his name?
Gadd.
Has he, I guess, or Netflix on his behalf, had they responded to that and said, I mean, this is what comes out in Discovery, obviously.
Right. So actually, he did. Oh, I should have pulled this. He did give a declaration in support of Netflix's motion.
Awesome.
So I'm sure he went into the real details of their interactions. But yeah, she, Ms. Harvey obviously came back and said, well, here's my version of how it went down.
Right.
The last part about substantial truth. So in reality, I guess she seems to admit that, yes, she did follow him around and attend his comedy performances. But there is this part of the miniseries where it portrays this woman, Martha, literally sitting outside of Gadd's apartment for like 16 hours a day, like sitting through the rain, sitting through the snow, every single day she was there. So that was a little bit extreme, or more extreme than the truth. All right, another defense that Netflix brought up was legally protected opinion. So as I mentioned before, opinions generally are free speech protected under the First Amendment. So Netflix tried to say that this series was written from Gadd's perspective, stating his opinions. And again, the court went back to that article that came out right after this lawsuit, where it says, no, Gadd told you he wasn't comfortable with this is a true story, and Netflix, you chose to run with that anyways. So, that you can't fall back on saying it's his opinion. You chose to portray this a certain way.
So our producer Kevin just pulled up the what I guess I'll call sworn affidavit. I think they call it something different.
Declaration.
They call it a declaration.
Yeah.
In support of the Netflix motion that we've been talking about here. This is Richard Gadd's essentially sworn testimony. It gets typed out and he signs it at the end and he swears it's true, etc. And it's 20-something pages. We kind of are skimming it here. However, just from skimming it, there are like details that are omitted. For example, he mentions that she was quote unquote handsy with him, and then mentions specifically that she grabbed his bum, and he uses the word bum. But does not mention that she grabbed his genitals, for example, which, were it true, I'm not saying it's not true, but you would include that in this if you were going to stand on that, so that's a significant distinction from the show versus his testimony.
Right.
Yeah. This is his opportunity to say what happened, and he's saying she grabbed my bum. He's not saying she grabbed my genitals, and that's a specific point of contention for the defamation case. And so that's, from Netflix perspective, that's problematic.
Mm-hmm. Wow, so I'm just reading this too. At the end, he said, there's a section, Harvey comes forward. He says throughout the process of writing the Baby Reindeer play and series, he intentionally did not refer to Harvey by name in any way. And then when viewers began speculating about the fact that it was her, he adds a screenshot of his Instagram story where he urged the viewers to stop speculating. And he says, I never intended the series to identify any real person as Martha Scott, including Harvey. Martha Scott is not Fiona Harvey. Like all characters in the series, Martha is a fictional character with fictional personality traits that are very different than Harvey's. So he is literally saying he made up this character.
Right.
And yet, I mean...
So Netflix...
although Netflix, gave this declaration in support...
Can't do that.
I think that the judge is rightly saying, your writer is saying that this is fictional.
Right.
Why did you present this as a true story?
Yeah, Gadd is saying, I embellished and created fictional characters based on my real-life experiences. Netflix is saying, no, you didn't. This is all true.
This is weird. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Yeah. I mean, to some extent, it obviously helps Netflix in that they're trying to say this isn't defamation. Like, we weren't talking about you, Harvey. This was never about you.
Right.
But on the other side, it's, yeah.
There's also really a lot of, we don't have to get into it, but there are a lot of pretty nasty and horrible details in this statement as well. So let's not, let's, even the things that she has tacitly admitted to are pretty bad stuff.
Right. Yeah. And ultimately, she's just bringing more publicity to it.
Yeah,
or,
she keeps...
Or it's starting to reveal things that probably wouldn't have ever seen the light of day.
Yeah. It's this is the Streisand effect, where you call attention to something by trying to cover it up, and all of a sudden people are talking about it because you want them to stop. So here we go.
Yep. Well, and we see that a lot with defamation. I think oftentimes plaintiffs don't realize that what a defamation lawsuit really means. You're saying that your reputation was ruined, and in doing that, you're opening up discovery to, well, what was your reputation before this came out?
Right.
Which means digging into, your closets and figuring out what type of person the community thought you were before this came out. And clearly, there was a lot of press surrounding her even before she even met Gadd about the fact that she was a stalker. So, maybe it was more local to London and Scotland, and now Netflix brought it to the world. I mean, I guess that's an argument she can make, but I don't know. This is an interesting decision by her.
So they're going to
bring
proceed
this
to discovery and get into all the nitty gritty of what does the show say versus what actually happened, and that process is going to be quite revealing about this woman who claims to have wanted to remain private and not be thrust into the international spotlight, and yet here we are.
Right. Well, so in this, I mean, maybe it came up in the briefs and the court just didn't discuss it in its opinion, but there's this issue of public figure or limited public figure.
Right.
And in the defamation world, if you're found to fall into one of those two categories, you can only prevail if you show actual malice, which means that the person defaming you knew that what they were saying was false, or they acted recklessly and essentially buried their head in the sand to the truth. Here, it seems like Netflix was trying to argue, and what does the court say about it? The court actually agrees that plaintiff may qualify as a public figure, but it was based on the fact that she at one point ran for public office, which to me wouldn't be the issue. I would think the issue is that she willingly went on Piers Morgan.
Yeah, that changes.
And identified herself and thrust herself into the controversy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was addressed in the briefings, but to me that would be the bigger sticking point.
And that changes what?
Well, I don't know. Now that I say that, I mean, I'm thinking also in the criminal context, if somebody gets accused of a crime and they respond to that, that doesn't necessarily qualify them as a public figure. You have the right to protect your reputation. But yeah, so maybe that wouldn't fall. I don't know. It kind of is on the line.
Yeah. Well, she admits that I'm not being flippant, but they say the word bum, so I have to use that word. But she admits that she grabbed this guy's bum, and but is otherwise but I didn't know all these other things. I understand. I will say, if you flip the script here, and it's a woman actor who is groped, and a guy's no, I just grabbed her ass, done. There's no defense to that, rightfully so. So it's an interesting dynamic in that regard too.
Right. She's trying to she admits to doing something, but it wasn't that bad.
Right. I'm just a harmless old woman. I didn't do anything that bad or whatever. Which would never fly, in another situation. I find that interesting.
So ultimately the SLAPP defense was denied. This motion was struck down, even though the court, noted some things like the fact that she may be treated as a public figure, a limited purpose public figure. That'll get sorted out, I think, more during discovery. But at least for now, she has shown that her claim has some merit, and it will survive dismissal. at least as to the claims of defamation, IIED, which is intentional infliction of emotional distress. Those are the only two that survived. So, those will move forward for now. So why don't we transition here to what I think we should now call, thanks to our producer's idea, Speculation Nation, and talk about what we think is going to happen with this lawsuit.
Yeah, I love that. Usually, big corporate defendant with a lot of money just wants to get the stuff over with. They'll get to a point where, hey, maybe we'll just settle the case or whatever. But I am interested to see, because it seems like they've taken a pretty aggressive defensive posture here. Pretty aggressive in the sense that they're like, this is substantial truth, one. We're not going to back down from that. We were absolutely entitled to claim that this is a true story because it is substantially true. Mm-hmm. And so we're not going to back down from that position. It's Netflix. They have a lot of money. They're not super worried about her. And also, I question what damages she's going to be able to establish under the defamation case. I don't know anything about the. She's making claims about her public image and how that works. And as I understand, that she might be making like a play at like royalties for the show, which could be a lot of money, and changes things for Netflix. But like in terms of like her damages, like what could they amount to in the single digit millions of dollars maybe, which is not enough for Netflix to like change.
Blank.
Yeah, they're right. So. Yeah. So they're taking an aggressive posture here, mm-hmm. and again, I tend to think like, this just adds to the intrigue of the show, of the story, and like unfortunately for her, let's give her the benefit of the doubt for a moment. Not that I necessarily think she particularly deserves it, but like let's assume for a minute that she has been like totally defamed and everything else. This is just going to make it worse, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is going to,
right.
This is not going to, no one's going to come out of this and be like, you know what, actually, she's great.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I mean, look, that's always, though, at play with defamation lawsuits.
Right.
So, that's kind of the balance that I think plaintiffs have to weigh out of, am I going to come out of this in a better position than when I went in?
Right.
I could see the IIED claims maybe having some teeth if she in fact received all the harassment she claims to have.
I'm sure she did, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. There are people out there who have nothing but time on their hands but to make others' lives miserable. So, that certainly could have happened. But as far as defamation and her reputation being lowered in the eyes of the community as a result of this, that's hard because I don't know if at trial, if this went that far, that a jury would agree with this judge that anyone or a reasonable viewer of this Netflix series would know that it was her. And the fact that she came forward within 2 weeks and made the public statement that it was her, the fact that Gadd is saying this wasn't about her, Martha was never supposed to be Harvey. Sure, there are similarities, but that's the liberties you take, as a writer.
Yeah. She's going on like national, like primetime TV to be like, why won't everyone stop talking about me?
Exactly. Yeah. You can't self-publish and claim defamation. So I don't know. And I think especially with Netflix, putting out these type of shows and series more and more often, maybe they need to set some precedent and fight this one.
They do a lot of true crime, a lot of not mockumentaries, but a lot of like, I would say thinly researched documentaries. And from their perspective, they might be like, let's start building out a protocol for defending these cases because mm-hmm. if we pay up on one, maybe everyone starts teeing off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But again, just going back to that bad fact, which is the worst fact for them, is that the writer did not want to say this is a true story, and Netflix went above him and did it anyway.
Yeah.
So, there is some potential liability there for that. But whether they want to take that to a jury, I guess that's for their lawyers to decide.
Yeah. Up next, we're going to be talking about the wave of lawsuits that were filed this week against social media company TikTok by a number of different states. I believe it was 14 total, and alleging different versions of the same things. And we're going to be working mostly from the complaint that was filed in our home state of Illinois here. And the allegations that effectively boil down to this. TikTok knows that the way that its app is structured and built is addictive. It's bad for mental health. It encourages addictive behavior. It both psychologically and physically causes harms to individuals, to its users, and nonetheless, despite knowing those things, continues to market its product specifically to young people who are most susceptible to those things and most vulnerable to them as well. So,
is this the first platform, do you know, that's been sued for this?
No, we'll get into that. There's a version of this lawsuit that was filed against Meta for similar things.
That's what I thought, yeah.
TikTok has different facts, and if anyone has ever used TikTok, the algorithm for recommendations of other videos and things like that is uncanny. It's, in my anecdotal experience, way better at guessing what you are going to sit and watch than say Instagram or anything else. So that's where this goes. So the claims, the lawsuits are brought under the Illinois Consumer Fraud Act and the Illinois Uniform Deceptive Businesses Practice Act, which, like I said, versions of this same type of complaint were filed in 13 other states, including, 12 states and then Washington, D.C. And I'll talk about that a little later, but let's stick to this one for now. So lawsuits are claiming that TikTok targeted children with harmful business practices, and it's also claiming that TikTok is deceiving the public about the social media platform's dangers. Here's what the Illinois Attorney General, Kwame Raoul, had to say on a statement that he issued from October 8th. This is from the Illinois Attorney General website. In addition to Illinois' lawsuit, 13 other states filed separate enforcement actions today against TikTok for violations of state consumer protection laws. In their lawsuits, Raoul and the attorneys general allege that TikTok's business model, which seeks to capture as much user time and attention as possible to sell advertising, has targeted youth, including teenagers and even younger children, in ways that take advantage of them. Quoting from Raoul here, American children and teenagers are in the grip of a devastating mental health crisis. The addictive features on TikTok's social media platform interfere with sleep and education and contribute to depression, anxiety, body dysmorphia, and thoughts of self-harm. In Illinois, we will always put our children and young people first. I'm committed to holding TikTok and any other social media companies accountable for putting profits ahead of our children's safety and well-being, unquote. So, I looked at the complaint. It's 80 pages. There is a lot of background facts in there, and the allegations kind of boil down to a couple things here. There's allegations that TikTok leverages the personal data collected on the app and other features to manipulate young people into staying on the platform longer than they otherwise would choose. The features are promoting excessive and compulsive and addictive use of TikTok. And there's a lot of psychological research that's sprinkled into the complaint, which I found interesting, about dopamine signals. And for example, here's a discussion that I left from the complaint here about concept known as variable rewards and how the app encourages that. And I'll quote from the complaint. Variable rewards hold a special thrill as the user anticipates a reward they know could come but is tantalizingly just out of reach. A gambler waiting to see where the roulette wheel will stop, or a viewer watching a presenter's dramatic pause before they announce a winner. In both cases, the individuals experience a dopamine rush as they anticipate the unknown outcome, unquote.
And how does that work with the platform? I'm not that familiar with TikTok, but...
So there's a lot of different allegations here. There's the posting aspect of it. There's watching, consuming TikToks, just scrolling, as well as the feedback of getting likes and views on videos that are posted. They're kind of going at it from all different angles, which is interesting. the allegations have a lot to say about the TikTok algorithm recommendations. There's also some discussions about like the use of filters that would promote like unrealistic beauty standards, things like that. The automatic playing feature that TikTok has, which you cannot disable. So if you watch a TikTok and then like you set your phone down, it'll just keep playing it over and over again.
Oh, okay.
Like you can't, it won't play it once and then stop.
Got it.
It'll keep going. Infinite scrolling, which means you'll never run out of TikToks. You just continuously scroll up and you'll always continue to see more. Push notifications, things like that. Some of these things are unique to TikTok. Some of them, in my experience, is like a millennial who, has been around social media. Some of them are, I think, also equally applicable to platforms like Instagram, or I suppose Facebook back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
TikTok is unique in how, frankly, good it is at getting people to stay on the platform. And there's a lot of research to that. So I don't necessarily know that it's any different in kind from what, say, like Instagram is trying to do. I think its difference is in like scope and like basically that TikTok is just better at doing the thing that all of these social media companies are trying to do anyways.
Yeah.
Which is, steal your attention,
Mm-hmm.
keep you hooked. So the complaint does rely a lot on, and this is where the consumer fraud aspect comes into play in the Deceptive Business Practices Act. The complaint relies a lot on the public record of statements, testimony, because the TikTok folks have testified in front of Congress, for example, and advertising that TikTok itself puts out, which it says that the company, doesn't do those things, right? It's a family-friendly platform, et cetera. So that's kind of the hook for, how did TikTok break the law? Is it's defrauding the public by maintaining that, we don't do these things and our platform doesn't operate that way when in fact it does. Mm-hmm. So this is the relevant portion of the Illinois Consumer Fraud and Deceptive Business Practices Act, which I'll read to you all. Quote, unfair methods of competition and unfair or deceptive acts or practices, including, but not limited to the use or employment of any deception, fraud, false pretense, false promise, misrepresentation, or the concealment, suppression, or omission of any material fact with the intent that others rely on that concealment, suppression, or omission of such material fact in the conduct of any trade or commerce are hereby declared unlawful, whether any person has in fact been misled, deceived, or damaged thereby. So, a claim under the Illinois Consumer Fraud Act is going to allege that, one, there's a deceptive act that's happening that the business is actually doing, and that there's an intent that others will rely on the act of deception. So we're going to lie about something, and we're going to hope that you believe us, and we're going to hope that you believe the lie so that you engage with our business.
Yeah, so I know there's been a lot of congressional hearings over the past, 5 years at least. I know Zuckerberg's been called in a bunch to testify about this sort of stuff. I think finally we're realizing the effects of social media on the youth.
Probably like 10 years too late, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't realize that they were actually saying we don't do these things and we don't create these algorithms and we don't, push content in this manner. Yeah,
I mean, the complaint gets into that where it's like TikTok advertises that it has like a 1 hour scroll limit, for example, and it says like this is like a unique safety and feature that we have where like after an hour, the app will no longer let you to scroll. Mm-hmm. And the complaint points out, no, it doesn't. After an hour, I've gotten this warning before. After an hour, I don't have TikTok on my phone anymore. But after an hour, it's like, hey, you should take a break. And then you could just scroll right past it. You're like, nah.
Oh, it actually does say. It says something, but it
says like you've been scrolling. It's like you've been scrolling for an hour. You need to stop.
Oh my gosh, Jack. How are you making your billable hours?
We have hobbies. And then and my TikTok algorithm is trained to present mostly just sovereign citizen arguments that happen in courtrooms.
Right.
I adore that. One of these days we'll do an episode on sovereign citizens. Anyways, so after an hour, you get that warning, and then you could just blow right past it, right?
Got it.
So that's like one of the things that they don't mention, and they're saying is deceptive.
Okay. Well, and I assume the argument is that especially parents are going to rely on these statements. I mean, our children are luckily still too young to have social media, but I've definitely had a lot of conversations with our partners or friends that have older children, and they've had to have these discussions of, all right, we're allowing you to have one social media account. Like, let's figure out what platform. And then the parent figures out what platform that's going to be based on safety features. So I get it if they're misrepresenting.
Yeah, and there's other things too, like that will have represented in certain circumstances that there's safety features available, or that they're not available, or they can't do something, they don't have the ability to do something or another. And then TikTok, for those of you who don't know, is the American version of the so there is a domestic American version of TikTok, and then there is a Chinese version of TikTok, both of which were created and or owned, I'm not exactly sure their current legal status, by a company called ByteDance. And there seems to be, at least according to the complaint and the little bit of research I did, more safety, content moderation, parental controls, things like that on the Chinese version than the American version. So that's another part of it too, where it's like you could actually improve on those things and you don't. Douyin is the Chinese version of TikTok. Okay.
So if you're owned by the same company and one arm is doing things safer than the other arm, that's not a good look.
Yeah. So the state of Illinois claims that TikTok has misrepresented a lot of these facts, has misrepresented specifically that TikTok is not psychologically or physically harmful to young users, that it is less addictive than it is, and that it is not designed to induce young users to compulsively use it, and so on. And then the state alleges TikTok engaged in unfair acts and practices such as, quoting from the complaint, targeting the TikTok platform to young users while knowingly designing the platform to include features that defendants knew to be psychologically and physically harmful to young users, including features known to promote compulsive, prolonged, and unhealthy use by young users. Utilizing platform features that unfairly harm young users independently of any actions taken by third-party users on the platform. These features include infinite scroll, ephemeral content features, autoplay, quantification and display of likes, user appearance altering features, disruptive alerts, all of which are unfairly utilized by defendant to extract additional time and attention from young users whose developing brains were not equipped to resist those manipulative tactics. Designing, developing, and deploying disruptive audiovisual and vibration notifications and alerts and ephemeral content features in a way that unfairly exploited young users' psychological vulnerabilities and cultivated a sense of fear of missing out in order to induce young users to spend more time than they would otherwise choose on the TikTok platform, unquote. There's also a count, as I mentioned, for the Illinois Uniform Deceptive Trade Practices Act, which the factual counts are, more or less similar enough. We don't really need to rehash them. This is what they're suing for. Here's the remedies that the state is looking for. Finding that TikTok violated the Consumer Fraud Act, a finding that they violated the Deceptive Trade Practices Act, an injunction to prevent future violations of the Consumer Fraud Act, which enjoining them from violating this act would mean, by the way, that TikTok would have to dramatically change the way that it operated. Ordering TikTok to pay penalties of up to $50,000 per unfair or deceptive act or practice, which would amount to like infinity dollars.
I was just gonna say, how do you even calculate that?
Yeah, exactly. It's an amount of money that would be in an amount that's incalculable given the amount of engagement that TikTok gets. Additional monetary relief, disgorgement of revenues, costs to the state of Illinois for bringing the action, so the $360 filing fee. So it's were the state to succeed on this, the outcome is like a tremendous financial penalty to TikTok. So listeners may think like, okay, well, they'll settle for some nominal amount. No, you got to understand, the state of Illinois, and in particular, there's a lot of states that have done this, but Illinois in particular has achieved massive settlements ultimately, but based on this type of litigation. A lot of it comes under the Biometrics Protection Act, things like that. But like in the many, many, many billions of dollars from tech companies like Facebook in the past, like verdicts or judgments or settlements that were so bad that Facebook, for example, had to shut down its facial recognition software, which was, if you remember, when you would upload a photo to Facebook, it would try to automatically tag who had thought it was there.
Yeah.
They stopped doing that because of the state of Illinois, because of how bad the damages could be. So, like, this action has a lot of teeth, and could result in, I mean, it could result in a lot of things, but it could result in it becoming financially unfeasible for TikTok to continue to exist the way that it does.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to change how it operates. If you guys are interested in that, go way back to episode 7 of the show where we talked about the state of Illinois lawsuit against Facebook on this facial recognition thing. So anyways, here's what a TikTok spokesperson said. In an emailed statement, TikTok spokesperson Alex Harek, Haurek, said the company strongly disagrees with these claims and believes they are inaccurate and misleading. Quote, "We're proud of and remain deeply committed to the work we've done to protect teens, and we will continue to update and improve our product. We provide robust safeguards, proactively remove suspected underage users, and have voluntarily launched safety features such as default screen time limits, family pairing, and privacy by default to minors under 16. Harek added that the company had, quote, endured to work with attorneys general over the last 2 years on privacy and safety issues and was incredibly disappointed with the legal action, unquote. So, a note about this lawsuit in the context of all the other ones. So the lawsuits were all filed about the same time. They're also containing similar allegations. The attorneys general that put these things together coordinated, I think, very closely to share evidence and to probably hash out legal theories and things like that. So it is a multi-state, bipartisan effort. There's a lot of red states and blue states that are involved in this. Very detailed. Everyone has done their homework. So it's not just the Illinois Attorney General that's looking to score like easy political points by being tough on big tech or whatever. Like
Right.
This is a serious lawsuit.
Wait, so are these separate lawsuits? Or are
Yes.
they? Oh, okay. They're not doing like multi-district.
No. And that's what's very interesting is that each of these lawsuits, they're all being brought under state law. So
because each state is going to have its own provisions on this.
But I mean, think about it. It's because if it were brought under like the federal versions of some of these statutes, right? Then TikTok could consolidate it all into one place and then essentially be dealing with one big lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
As it is, split across the 18 different jurisdictions, none of them that I saw, by the way, alleged anything under federal statute, which I found very interesting.
Strategic, I'm sure.
Yes, because that would allow for like consolidation and allow for TikTok to get multiple things under one roof. As it is, they have to retain lawyers who are licensed in 14 states to defend against 14 different complaints, each of which is citing to different statutes that are all going to have substantive differences. I mean, they're going to be similar enough that you can, in broad strokes say, listen, TikTok got sued for fraud and deceptive business practices in 14 different states, but like how that actually operates, the law that is going to trigger liability under those statutes, different thresholds, all that stuff is going to be different state by state. So like, I find that interesting because that's absolutely intentional, right?
Oh, for sure.
And because it causes, I mean, frankly, it costs TikTok more money. Not they don't have it. It also requires TikTok to be speaking and taking positions in 14 different cases that all have to be aligned. So you can't, deny something in one case and then admit to it in another. That'll be used against you. So it's a very, very, very thin, narrow path that TikTok has to trend here if they're going to defend these things on the merits. I find that very interesting. And I I was thinking about this, like you try not to get into like politics and watching the news, but you've heard a lot of people complaining about like the term lawfare has been getting thrown around. Have you seen that? Mm-hmm. So like saying, different enforcement actions are like targeted for political reasons.
Oh yeah.
And like Eric Adams, who is the mayor of New York City, for example, is being, I guess, indicted for something about taking money illegally from Turkey. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But he's saying I'm being unfairly. This is lawfare, like a play on warfare. Like I'm being targeted by, I don't know, the Democratic machine for some reason or another. They're using these investigations to, to cost me money and create headaches and basically bother me, et cetera. Take that for whatever it's worth. This actually is an example of that. This is what I would call like targeted, weaponized litigation that is, of course, trying to, go after TikTok for things that these states believe is important, but also going to do it in the most painful way they can and make it expensive and make it hard and make it like, and make it difficult to defend. And that's part of litigation. That's just, frankly, that's good lawyering. But that's what this can look like. 14 different states, each taking slightly different positions, going to be on different timelines, going to be asking for different things in discovery. All the states will be coordinating and sharing information as it comes out. That's like, and whether it's good or bad. I mean, this is like what a, like quote unquote politically coordinated, like, enforcement action looks like.
I'm wondering if, because I was just doing some quick Googling to see, obviously multi-district litigation, that's a thing in federal court, but thinking about lawsuits we've seen in the past where they'll try to get a stay in one jurisdiction.
Sure.
If it's raising the same issues, but I wonder if that would work in this case.
I mean, I can tell you the one that's pending in Illinois is pending in Cook County in the Chancery Division where I'm at all the time. And the odds of them getting...
Oh, they won't stay.
Not a chance.
No.
Not a chance in the world that they're going to stay this case.
But I wonder if if TikTok will try to argue, Illinois should be the leader on this.
I'm sure they will, but
try to stay the other.
But every other judge, there's 14 other judges. I mean, there's 13 other judges now. They're all going to be the one who rules on the TikTok thing.
Well, and like you said, it's strategic. They're bringing it under the state's laws,
yes.
And a state has a unique interest in regulating its own laws.
Absolutely. It's interesting to me that everyone seems to have completely like even DC. DC has its own version of like privacy laws. I was looking at their complaint. It's different from Illinois, but it's around the same facts basically. And it's unique. It's like you can't say this is the same as what state of Illinois is alleging. They are different.
And this is civil.
Yeah.
Because I know our Illinois statute does have a criminal component too, but even the civil statute has a lot of teeth in that you can get attorney's fees, you can get punitive damages.
Big time.
Because it's based on fraud. So I would assume that probably other jurisdictions are similar.
Sure. And a lot of these attorneys general, like Illinois, for example, like Texas, for example, have experience in their attorneys general office of these complex lawsuits where the state is the plaintiff against large tech companies. Like it's, say what you want about people will say have stereotypes about public employees or whatever. These types of prosecutors are the best at this stuff.
Yeah.
And you will have to pay through the nose to find competent defense for these types of things. And so the division specifically in Illinois, it's the Consumer Protection Division of the Attorney General Office. Like those guys know what the heck they're doing. So yeah, I mean this is a bombshell of a development. These lawsuits filed against TikTok.
And it may not be over. There may be other states that jump on board.
100%. They're going to see that they can get in on this, and they're going to go for it. This is welcome to Speculation Nation. I'm your host, Jack Sanker. I'm gonna guess what I think is going to happen here. it's serious. Like, this has the potential to nuke the platform as we know it.
Well, and even I was just thinking through now too, like discovery issues. So we have what's called a common interest privilege, where you can essentially assert privilege over your communications and documents shared with a similarly situated litigant who has the same interests as you.
Right.
So I would assume all of these states have something like that in place. It's going to make discovery cheaper for them because they can share theories, they can share information, documents.
Or, hey, I forgot to ask for something in my case. My deadline's passed, but you have some time. Why don't you ask in your case? Like,
exactly.
It's
like TikTok's going to be litigating against 14 plus amazing attorneys in every single case.
Yeah. There's kind of going back to the substance of the allegations. I think. It kind of boils down to, hey, these like apps, social media platforms, TikTok in this case, are psychologically addictive, basically in the exact same way that gambling is, and other addictive behaviors. And you, TikTok, know that. And despite knowing that, here's all the things that you're doing to basically go after and target teenagers and children. And like the whole, is this addictive or not? Or is this, does this create compulsive habits or not? Interestingly, in the complaint, there is a lot of like citations to different psychological studies or whatever, but they go back decades. I mean, we have studied like gambling, for example, for a long time in this country. And so we do know the way in which gambling can affect the way that your brains function, wired basically. And there's reasons why gambling is illegal in all 50 states for folks under a certain age.
Right.
Because we know this is not good for them. Like it harms them psychologically, which can manifest in like physical harm.
And even it's like the real life version of social media in that, even the way that casinos are set up, the lights, the way the games make noises, the way, there are all these cues that draw you in.
There's a lot of research where a lot of these platforms, TikTok is the big one, Instagram as well, like the scrolling thing is like meant to tickle the same part of your brain that the slots wheels does. Yeah. It's because you're essentially looking at a slots wheel.
Right.
And so you keep scrolling, and you get that same dopamine hit that you would from like playing a slot machine. So.
Well, and if we as adults can't resist it, obviously,
right?
How the heck would you expect a growing brain to?
Yeah, it's that your product is actually, in terms of the effects on the human brain, pretty close to how gambling or other behavioral addictions work, and yet you still deliberately target people whose minds and psychology are not only the most susceptible to those tactics, but also the most likely to be harmed psychologically and physically. And this is, at least in Illinois, this is the hook that gets you into the consumer fraud actions, and you keep lying about it.
I was going to say that's because it's consumer fraud and then the deceptive trade practices. So there has to be the deception and the fraud.
You keep lying about it. You keep telling us that your thing doesn't do this, and you know that it does. And this stuff is like not quack science. Like like I said, we've studied gambling for decades. Like we know this stuff pretty well. And
you have to imagine that TikTok and other social media platforms, that they're doing their research. They're making updates based on... Well,
that's why the app is so good at doing what it does, which is drawing people in, and they waste time, and they get fed ads and everything else. There's other interesting things in the complaint about like the TikTok marketplace, which I don't know anything about. It, to me, like screams like, I'm going to get my identity stolen if I touch this. But maybe 15-year-olds don't see that.
Right.
And that's another element of the complaint as well, is that you were like, it's like remember like QVC, like the home shopping network, whatever. It's like kind of like that, from what I gather. But like you're getting sold on like products made God knows where, and like whether they're safe or whatever, or you even get them. Like who knows? So
Temu.
It's
my mom with Temu.
Right. Yeah. So and then it's just like you don't even know you're watching an ad sometimes. You just like, that's the whole thing. It's so anyways, I will say, I do think it's rich that all of a sudden TikTok is the boogeyman for this stuff when, like, I mean, Instagram and Facebook and, I mean, they've been doing it for forever and they do the same thing.
Yeah, but they've gotten their licks too.
Yeah.
You know?
I said at the beginning, I think that TikTok is being penalized here for just being best at it. And that, so that's not, we shouldn't assume, like, TikTok is not any, they're all trying to do the same thing. TikTok is just succeeding them the most. I also think it's a little rich, you know, that we're like, oh man, we're, but this app is, you know, it's creating a sensation akin to gambling. And then it's like Disney, which owns ESPN, is like doing wall-to-wall ads every broadcast on ESPN for like actual gambling, you know, like literal actual gambling. Like you are.
But are they lying about it?
Right. I know, but like let's stop clutching our pearls here and be like, well, our children are being exposed to these.
Right.
I'm like, no, if you like sit down and try to watch an NFL game, if you took a shot every time they aired a gambling ad, you would black out by the end of the first quarter. So,
So true.
So like, you know, I mean, I'm personally good luck to the attorneys general here. You know, it seems like, you know, this is the right motivation here. But I am a little like, all of a sudden TikTok is like the punching bag for all this frustration about, you know, social media effects on our kids. And like, that cat is so far out of the bag. You know, like we've I don't know. That's a whole other discussion, but like.
Well, yeah. I mean, now we have states. We've covered it in past shows too, where states are starting to make their own rules about the age limits for social media. You know, whether those laws stand up, I guess, is still to be seen. But it seems like there's pressure on the legislature to hit this from all angles.
Yeah. And you know, I think if the goal here is to like rein in addiction to your phone, basically, I'll say for young kids, like this is 1% of what would be needed to do that. You would have to dramatically rethink the way in which like we advertise and do things like that. That said, it's an interesting lawsuit. I will keep my eye on this because I'm very interested to see where it goes.
Yeah, I might pop in to a proceeding or two.
Yeah,
right up
right
the street from us.
Yeah.
So
it's our home turf.
Yep. And if you're interested in learning more about online safety and laws that are being put into place to protect children on social media platforms, we did cover some of that in episode 46, talking about a lawsuit filed in December 2023 against Meta, bringing up issues of the lack of age verification on that platform. All right, that's our show for this week. Reminder that we have shows coming out every 2 weeks. Please like, follow, subscribe to Litigation Nation wherever you get your podcasts. And leave us notes if you want to hear content, different areas of law. We'd be happy to tune into whatever our viewers are interested in. So that's it for now. Thanks for listening.